so today I'm going to do my top 13 books of 2013, and I am including books that I read this year, not ones that were released this year. These aren't in any order whatsoever, so it's Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. This is about a girl named Kath, and she has a twin sister named Bren, and they're obsessed with Simon Snow, which is basically this world's Harry Potter. They are obsessed. They spend their whole lives reading, writing fan fiction, trolling the forums, and etc., etc. And then they go away to college, and Ren decides she doesn't want to be Kath's roommate, and she doesn't want to be a Simon Snow fangirl anymore. And Kath doesn't want to let go of that, and she has this roommate that's surly, and there's a boy in her room all the time, and blah blah blah. And this book understands my feelings about the end of Harry Potter. All the characters are just so lovable, and the relationships are believable, and this book is just so cute, and I adore it, and I want to hug all the characters. The next book I picked is Eleanor Park by Rainbow Rowell, again, because her writing is just so phenomenal. And this is about Eleanor and Park and their relationship. It's like a YA contemporary novel, so I can't say too much or it'll give everything away, but there's a chubby, red-headed, freckled, goodwill-wearing, poor, awkward female protagonist and a Korean guy that's not a stereotype. What? You go, Rainbow Rowell. This book just made me feel all of the things. Just all of them. I just love these characters, and I want to hug them and make them safe. And A Million Books by Rainbow Rowell. Please and thank you. A Natural History of Dragons, a memoir by Lady Trent by Marie Brennan. And this cover is my favorite cover of any of the covers ever. This book is set in oldenish times. I'm not exactly sure when, but there is a little girl, and she wants to study dragons, but it's improper for a lady because they're just supposed to, you know, be pretty, marry a husband, etc., etc. And it's told from the perspective of her when she's old and she's already the most prominent dragon scientist in the whole world, so you get to see her journey. And I originally thought this was a standalone book, and I got to the end and then I was like, holy shit, is there another book? And I looked it up, in 2014 there's going to be a sequel, which is very exciting because this book is so good, and I've just never read anything like it, and I've never even heard of anything like it. There's mystery and intrigue, and it's so much more than I expected it to be, because I don't even really know what I was expecting, but I wasn't expecting it to blow my mind. And it's got gorgeous drawings inside of the book, which I can't show you, obviously, but it's got a brilliant, lovable, independent scientist, kick-ass strong woman in it, and she don't need no man. I mean, she has a man, but she don't need no man. And it's kind of like sci fantasy, if that's a thing. That's not a thing, but if there was, this would be that, and it's just very, very amazing. My next pick is Game of Thrones and Clash of Kings, which I counted as one book because YOLO, and these are the first two books in the Song of Ice and Fire series by George R.R. Martin, which you may know from the television show called Game of Thrones. These books are about the kingdom of Westeros, which I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing wrong, and winter lasts decades, and it's just a very harsh landscape to live in, and just, it's very hard to survive these books. I can't say too much because I will probably spoil things, but these books have dragons and violence and kick-ass women and twisting, turning and plots. Beheadings. Kick-ass dire wolves. Just, the plot never stops being exciting, and you just want to turn the page after page after page. They're just brilliant, and I can't recommend them highly enough. The next book I chose is Howls Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. You may know this from the Hayao Miyazaki film, which is beautiful and wonderful, but this freaking book is so good I can't even. Like, I really wish I had read this as a kid. I would have died. I mean, I still died, but I would have died harder, which makes sense. This book is about a girl named Sophie, and she is the eldest of 3 sisters, and she's always just, you know, trying to provide for the family and help out when she meets the Witch of the Waste, and she gets a curse on her that turns her into an old lady. and she has to try to figure out how to turn young again. And there's also this mysterious wizard named Howl that eats women's hearts, and this book is just so good and hilarious, and the writing is amazing. Like, you can clearly see the pictures in your head, and it's phenomenal, and there's quirky characters that I love. Like, I really love these characters, and the magic is awesome, and the plot just comes together so nicely, and just fantastic book. The next book I chose was Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman, and I'm a huge Neil Gaiman fan, but I had not read all of his books, and I picked this one up, and it's already one of my favorite Neil Gaiman books ever. He's just so imaginative, and So this book is about a guy named Richard Mayhew, and he's just this ordinary citizen of London. And then one day he's walking down the street and he finds this girl bleeding and dying on the sidewalk, but nobody seems to notice her except for him. And he discovers London below, which is down in the subways and the shadows, and there's this whole culture of people down there. And this book is just one of those books where I was like, I can't even fathom that the human mind could come up with something this brilliant, until I realized that, of course, Neil Gaiman is not human. He's just a shell of a human filled with complexly imaginative, amazing fucking ideas. God, he's brilliant. The girl, Dor, and the villains, Vandermeer and Krupp, are just so kick-ass and amazing, just wonderful characters. And just, this book, like, the imagery was like straight out of a movie. See it in your head. So freaking fantastically cool. The next book I picked is Book Thief by Markus Zusak, and do you feel like crying for 3 months on end, then you should read this book. And if you don't want to, you should still read this book because it's freaking fantastic. I don't have this with me because I also lent that one to my dad. But this is set in World War II with the Nazi regime, and there's a girl named Liesel, and she gets adoptive parents and just book burnings, and she steals books, and this is a fantastic book and you just need to read it. The writing is phenomenal, and it's told from Death's perspective, which sounds super corny, but Markus Zusak does it so phenomenally that it's not corny in the slightest. I just feel so deeply affectionate for all the characters in these books, and they're just fully developed characters, and they develop believably and wonderfully, and I just care so deeply for them. Oh my god. Next, I have The Disreputable History of Frankie Landau Banks by E. Lockhart, and this book was recommended to me by John Green. Not personally, but he recommended it to everyone. And I'm so glad I read this because it's wonderful. To describe this book, I just want to read the back of it. To Headmaster Richmond and the Board of Directors, Alabaster Preparatory Academy. I, Frankie Landau Banks, hereby confess that I was the sole mastermind behind the maldoings of the Loyal Order of the Basset Hounds. I take full responsibility for the disruptions caused by the order, including the library lady, the doggies in the window, the Night of 1,000 Dogs, the Canned Beet Rebellion, and the abduction of the guppy. That is, I wrote the directions telling everybody what to do. I and I alone, no matter what Porter Welsh tells you in his statement. Of course, the dogs of the order are human beings with free will. I did not threaten them or coerce them in any way, and if they chose to follow my instructions, it was not because they feared retribution. I am not asking that you indulge my behavior, merely that you do not indulge it without considering its context. Yours sincerely, Frances Rose Landau Banks. Frances Rose Landau Banks, class of 2010. Okay, so this book is about a girl named Frankie Landau Banks, and she's this quiet, daddy's girl, teacher's pet kind of girl, and she goes away to boarding school, and just boarding school and lots of epic pranks. This book is like really fast-paced, lighthearted read that will have you cracking up and smiling. This book I picked is actually a manga, and it's a series, which is Fullmetal Alchemist by Hiromi Arakawa. I can't pronounce Japanese names, I'm so sorry. Arakawa! This is about the Elric brothers, Edward and Alphonse, and they dabble in alchemy, which is, you know, like a power, and you use things to create things and blah blah blah. They try to bring their dead mother back with it, and in the process, Alphonse loses his body, and Edward loses his arm, and then trying to bring his brother back, he loses a leg. So this is their journey trying to get their original bodies back. And this book, everything about this book is beyond A+. The characters, the plot, the writing, the pictures, just everything is so good. But the best thing about these are the characters. Like, everything else is phenomenal, but the characters are so believable and fully developed, and like, they seem real, and you love all of them, and you just care so deeply about them that the plot really matters to you and you care what happens, which makes it a very, very fun experience to read it. And the plot is interwoven and beautiful and awesome, and alchemy is fucking cool. My next pick is Good Omens by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett, and this is about the apocalypse, and you know, everybody's trying to prepare, but nobody can find the Antichrist, and it's just freaking phenomenal. And Neil Gaiman. I'd never read Terry Pratchett, and it's hilarious, and the quotes just, it's one of the ones where I text people the quotes, like when I'm mid-sentence, I will text people quotes from it because they're so good. And I love Crowley and Aziraphale, and their dynamic is just amazing, and every time they're in a scene together, you know it's going to be wonderful. And it's offensive and satirical and witty, and I just still laughed to myself thinking about this book because it's just wonderful. The next book I picked is The Ultimate Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams, which is book 1 through 5 of the Hitchhiker series, and which is about this guy named Arthur Dent, and he is a human that lives on Earth, and then the Earth is destroyed, and he has to go hitchhiking through space, and it's just comedical space adventures. I laughed out loud more times at this book than I have laughed out loud between all the books I've ever read combined, which is a lot of books. And Marvin is the greatest robot in the world, or universe, or whatever. And this book is full of quotes where you're like, where the hell does that quote come from? It's probably from this book. Next is Dragon, Sword, and Windchild by Noriko Agawara and translated by Kathy Hirano. This is the first book in the Tales of the Magatama trilogy, and this book is so amazing. It's about this girl named Saya, and she lives in Toyowashi Hara, which is what they're named for, is basically ancient Japan. Saya finds out that she's the reincarnation of the Water Maiden, which is one of the only people who can control this deadly sword, and she's part of the dark, but she's raised to love the light, and she's very conflicted about this, and this book is so good, and I'm just really mad that this isn't popular in America because it's so fucking good. The imagery and the mythology and the characters and the relationships and Jaya! So good. After I finished this book, I just wanted to reread it right away because it was so good. And the final book I want to tell you about is Divergent by Veronica Roth, which you probably already know what it's about. It's a dystopian about this world where they all live in factions, and they're all based on virtues of humanity, and when you turn 16, you take this test, and it helps you decide which faction to go into, but if you leave your faction, you have to leave your family, and you can't really talk to them ever again. And this is about a girl named Triss and her, you know, journey about that, because she wants to leave her faction, but she doesn't want to leave her family, and blah, 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 blah. And I will admit right now that the 2 sequels, because this is a trilogy, the 2 sequels were just kind of okay. Like, I enjoyed them, but they weren't that good. But this book is kick-ass. Like, it's a fast-paced page-turner, and the action is amazing, and all the stuff about the different factions and the serums and stuff is super cool. That's my top 13 books of 2013. Bye!